church for a long time. We have Colin, who was here this morning, couldn't come back. We gave him his Bible this morning. We have Titus. Those of y'all know who Tab is. His son's Noah that's in the special needs class. Titus is a senior at Martin. He's a wrestler. Titus has a really cool introductory to me because his first Wednesday night here we played dodgeball, and I've never met the kid or anything like that. And he starts playing dodgeball, and he just slings one as hard as he could and gets me out. And I don't think I've seen a high school kid throw a ball that hard. So that's why Titus always stands out to me. So those three, we have Liberty, who was here for a while. She moved. Then we have the three tonight is Mason, Matthew, and Landry that are going to be here tonight, that we have Bibles for them. So those three of y'all, if y'all actually want to go ahead and come up here on stage, I didn't necessarily warn them that I was doing this, but I'm doing it anyways. So if y'all three want to come up here, if y'all also, the church, y'all want to give them applause. These are our three graduates. So there's yours, Landry. You can come over or just stay right there. That works too. Yep. There's yours, Mason. So I'm going to let you all do a few, just kind of introduce yourself, say something about yourselves, and then just let them know what your next stage is, what you plan to do. If you plan to go to college, work, whatever it is, whatever y'all want to share. Whoever wants to go first, don't fight over it. But sure, go ahead, Landry.
Howdy, I'm Landry Taylor. I've gone here since I was about 5, I think. So I have 12 years now. I've had a lot of cool memories here, lots of funny stuff. I think one of my funniest memories is when I got my tonsils out when I was 8 or 9, and the only thing I remember from it is Brother Mara standing over me like this, just making sure I'm okay. I was like, yep, that's Brother Mara right there. I'm going to A&M in the fall. I'll be doing business in hopes of pursuing a master's in business administration, and I guess going into business. I don't really know how you put that, but I look forward to it. So I've had a lot of fun memories here. I'm definitely going to miss this place and everybody who's part of it.
No, you can go sit down. You're next, Matthew. Keep going straight. Back to your pulpit you were just at.
My home.
There you go.
So, most of you guys probably don't know me. I'm new here. I am 18 and I'm graduating on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to it. My plans for next year are to go to Texas Baptist Institute in Henderson, Texas. A lot of y'all know it well, and my goal is to keep working here, doing the music here, and also to study music ministry, and that's just a basis, just to get some better Bible knowledge and get more music knowledge also. So that's my goal for next steps.
All right. You can go sit down too. Also, if y'all didn't notice, I didn't give Matthew a Bible. I told him I was just going to hand him his keyboard after, but we are going to give him something since we didn't give him a Bible.
Good evening. Some of y'all know me. My name is Mason Honey. I've been going here since, I think, 2nd grade, thanks to that wonderful man right there, Matthew. He's been my best friend probably, since I met him, honestly. After high school, I planned going through HVAC schooling. Gonna work in that because, Texas, everybody needs air conditioning. It's a necessity here. But, yeah, that's really it. I'm not that interesting.
That's not true. Mason's very interesting. Mason is probably one of the most sarcastic kids I've ever met. But while you're teaching, too, he'll let you know he's very sarcastic. Him and Matthew both are really good at that. They'll sit next to each other, and they won't necessarily say a lot, but you can hear them always whispering to each other, and they'll both start laughing, and then you'll ask, oh, what'd you say? And it's some form of a sarcastic remark is what it usually is. And you can never tell who it came from either. Yeah. So thank y'all for coming up here. Like I said, I didn't necessarily let them know that I was doing that. But, you know, graduation is, you know, a big deal, right? You know, I think a lot of times we kind of oversimplify graduating high school. It's just something you're supposed to do. And a lot of times, you know, we say, you know, you're just supposed to go to college, or you're just supposed to, you know, go and get a job right away. And I think that's kind of one thing that I don't necessarily agree with. I think one of the great things about graduating high school is you kind of have freedom, but you get to experience the world in a whole different set of eyes, you know, which is also kind of scary when you think about it. You know, there's a lot of unknown, but you get to see what you want to do. You know, high school, they tell you what classes to take, they tell you what you should do. You know, a lot of times they tell you how you're supposed to dress, what you eat for lunch, you have limited options, and it's exciting. So as y'all get ready, it's very exciting. It was, for me at least. But tonight, I have a very fitting message, and so we're going to be talking about our purpose. And this is fitting, one, for graduates, but it's also fitting for us as adults. Because a lot of adults still struggle with what their purpose is, right? And so I don't know how many of y'all, so I'm going to have y'all do this too. I ask questions a lot with the youth, and I tell them if nobody responds, I'm just going to sit there in silence until somebody responds, and it gets awkward for all of us. So when I ask questions and I raise my hand, I hope that y'all will raise your hand too, so we don't just sit here in silence, right? But, so my first question is, how many of y'all have an iPhone? Majority of y'all. So majority of y'all are on the good side, right? But, I don't know if y'all have noticed, so when you have an iPhone and somebody that you don't have their number saved, and they text you and they say, hey, this is so-and-so, what does the message, usually like the contact, what does it say? Maybe, asterisk, colon, whatever that's called, and the name, right? It guesses who it is based off of the message. And the title of our message tonight is Maybe God. That's the title of my message tonight. And so when you think about it, is we all have a message from God. And we have to choose if we're going to read it or not read it, right? Same thing with when we get text messages. We read it. Usually what I do is I read like the first line to see if it's something important or if it's somebody I know, if it's spam. I don't know if y'all have been getting these like toll tag text messages. Hannah and I get them nonstop. Hannah got one yesterday that was in a group message with like 4 people. So they're really stepping up their game now. But so tonight we're going to be talking about our calling. Right? So the first scripture, is the projector working tonight? Good? All right, so we're going to go to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1. And it says, I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherefore ye are called. So when I say calling, what do y'all think? Your job? What else? Ministry? Any purpose? Okay. Anything else? Life purpose. Invitation. Right. There's a bunch of different things of what we think a calling is. Right? And we say everybody has their own calling. Right? And everybody does have their own calling. But tonight we're going to focus on is everybody actually has the same calling. Every one of us have the exact same calling, don't we? We all are called to be what? To be disciples, right? We're all called to love the way Jesus loved. We're called first to love God, and then we're called to love other people. That's what we're all called to do. And so, but before you can get called to, like we said, job, some people said their ministry, their purpose, before you can figure out what that calling is you have to figure out who you are first. But for me to figure out who I am, I have to figure out who God is first. And that is what, as graduates or adults, that is what my real question is first, is do you know who God is? And not just know of God, right? We all know that God created everything, We all know he created us. We know he sent his son for us. And we know, a lot of people in the world today know who God is. But they don't know him on a personal level. They don't live for him. They don't do what he tells them to do, right? I know who my parents were when I was growing up. I knew who they were. But I did not always listen to what they told me to do, right? And I still don't listen to what they tell me to do because I'm an adult now and I don't have to. I'm kidding. But that is the case with a lot of us. We know what God calls us to do, but we still choose not to do it, don't we? And so your calling is who you are before what you're doing. You have to figure out who God is calling you to be before he's calling you to what you're supposed to be doing. So 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9 says, "Who hath saved us and called us with an holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which hath given us in Christ Jesus before the world began." So I'm not called to my works, right? I'm not called for anything else other than his purpose. And God's purpose in our lives is a lot different than the world's purpose, right? How many of y'all have ever heard the saying personal brand? Most of y'all have heard that saying, right? Especially nowadays with social media, your personal brand is really, really important, isn't it? Your personal brand helps you get a job one day. Your personal brand helps you, with sell things. It helps you with a lot of things, your personal brand, right? Your resume is supposed to be basically sell you to your future employer, right? And so when we think about it, what does my resume say to get me into heaven? Right? Can I put anything on my resume that can actually buy my way into heaven? Not at all. Right? But I actually can put one thing on there. Right? That I'm saved by grace through my faith, and that's what gets me into heaven. But you notice the Bible never calls us to a specific career, does it? Does it? It doesn't call, like for me, I'm a financial accountant or internal auditor, right? The Bible didn't tell me that, hey, this is your calling, this is where you're supposed to be. I'm still trying to figure out what my calling is, right? And I think everybody's still at some point in their life, and they're always trying to figure out what they're being called to do, because it changes every day, right? I'm called to share the gospel with somebody every day, as much as I can. I'm called to love other people as much as I can. And the Bible just tells us to do two things, to love God and to love other people. And so when I do that, I don't have to ask what my calling is, because I know it. I've figured it out. I don't have to worry about anything else. So instead of saying, what am I called to do, we need to ask ourselves, who am I called to be? And as for me especially, like I said, when I graduated high school, I had one plan in mind, and it was just to coast until I figured out where Hannah was going to go. I didn't have any other purpose. Wasn't focused on God, wasn't focused on my grades, wasn't focused on my career. I was focused on one thing. Right, and that's it. And, it lucked out for me because then she made me realize what my calling was. As a loving wife, she motivates me to pursue God, right? And that's what we should all strive to be. As husbands or wives, we should motivate our spouses to do. But I wasn't focused on what my real purpose was. I didn't know who I was because all I wanted to do was hang out with Hannah. That's all I wanted to do. Because once I lost soccer, right? We've all heard that story. I don't need to go through it again. Once I couldn't play anymore, before that was my purpose. My purpose was 100% playing soccer, and that was it. Well, I couldn't do it anymore, so what was I supposed to do? And I didn't want to try to figure it out. I was just going along with emotions. Well, I definitely wasn't going to ask God what my purpose was, because I was mad at God, right? I'm sure we've all been mad at God at some point, right? And it's not a good feeling. I can remember sitting in my bed and just fully have hatred to God because he took the one thing that I cared about. But, when you look back at it now, I realize how dumb I was to realize that that's who I was. I thought soccer was who I was. And then it was, okay, now who I am is however I can make the most amount of money. Whatever I can do to make the most amount of money, that's who I am, right? What job gets me the best or the most amount of money? And so, I worked, and we've heard this story too, of worked in retail, was making good money, but it couldn't be to church. Then I decided, you know what, fine, I'm going to give my life and my money to God, and He's going to figure it out. And then He's blessed me beyond my imagination where I am. Right now, I would say I'm called to be the youth pastor at our church, right? I'm called to be a husband to Hannah. I'm not called to be a father yet, right? I have a dog, so I'm called to be a proud dog dad, but that's it, right? But those things take very different skill sets, don't they? All three of those things take very different skill sets. I could come up here and realize, and I could give you the best sermon possible. But giving you the best sermon possible doesn't mean I'm going to be the best husband, does it? Or I could be the best husband possible, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be the best youth pastor or the best example to the kids, right? And hopefully you realize with this example is who I am to God is way more important than what I'm called to do. Being the youth pastor isn't what's important to God. Being a husband isn't what's important to God. What's important to God is where my heart is and who I'm living for and how I do those things. And what I mean is, like I said, I could give the perfect lesson to the youth on a Wednesday night, but I go home and I don't take care of Hannah and I'm not a good husband. Am I fulfilling my calling? No, I'm not fulfilling my calling. But I did what I was supposed to do back there, but I'm not fulfilling my calling. Your calling starts with who you are and where your heart is. Your calling isn't something you're looking forward to in the future, right? It's all about faithfulness to God, but it starts today. It doesn't start in the future. We say, like we asked the three guys up here, what are your plans going forward, right? And there's a strong chance that all three of their plans change, right? How many of y'all, when you graduated high school, are doing what you thought you were going to be doing? My mom, and that's it. So don't look at her. But you notice how none of the rest of us raised our hands, right? None of us. Because we can't see the future, can we? And I wish I could. If I could have a superpower, that would be my superpower. I wish I could see the future. Or I wish I could travel to the future, right? Because I'd be really rich, because I'd figure out how to make money, what to make money on. But it doesn't, my future starts right now. I talk to the youth every day, or on Wednesday nights, and I let them know all the time, is that what I do today will greatly affect me in the future. Way more than we realize. What I do right now and how I act right now is going to make a huge difference in my life. And so I'm going to jump to Colossians chapter 3, verse 16. And it says, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatsoever ye do, in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God and the Father by Him." And so we are called to live by God. But when we do those things, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to give thanks to Him. And the hardest part is because life gets hard, and it's hard to give thanks to God when life gets hard. It's really hard to do that. I don't want to thank somebody for when I'm having a terrible day. I don't want to be, sometimes it's hard to be the best husband when I'm having a bad day, isn't it? It's hard to be the best youth pastor when you're dealing with kids who do not want to listen to you at all, right? And I think God partially called me to be the youth pastor because I was difficult to my teachers. And I think God is kind of giving me a little revenge almost. Not revenge, but He's teaching me a lesson of the way I was. And I wasn't necessarily the worst here, but definitely at school, I was not the best student, right? I could get my work done like that. And not to prop myself up, but I could understand and comprehend my work. But I would finish my work so fast, now I got all this time to do whatever I want to do, right? And it was not listening to my teachers or anything like that. And I think that's part of the reason why God has called me to be the youth pastor, is because he's giving me some students who are the exact same as me, and it's teaching me a lesson. And so, and it's funny to see that, right? And sometimes I have to, I talk to my parents a lot of like, one, how did you deal with me, as a student? Or I text my dad and I ask him for advice in certain things. And I'm very blessed in that way that I can do that. But we all have somebody that we can ask for some advice for, right? We all have somebody that we can talk to daily and figure out where we're supposed to go, what we're supposed to be doing. And I want to ask you this. How many of you want to be important? Anybody? Anybody want to be important? I would say at some point, all of us want to be important. We want to be looked at and looked up to at some point in our lives. Me, so there's times where I want to walk into a room and be looked at as like, yeah, he's the guy, right? And that's not always a good thing. Sometimes my pride gets in my way of, yes, I know I'm the guy in this situation, right? Playing soccer, sometimes I knew I was better than other people, and as a competitive male, I like to let other people know that I was the guy, right? But I think that's also partially why God allowed me to marry Hannah, because Hannah is probably more competitive than I am, right? And it really helps me and keeps me level. But we all want to be important, right? We all want to be looked at and looked up to. And I was reading this as I was studying today for this lesson. So Mark chapter 10, I didn't give him these messages, right? This is right before Jesus' triumphal entry, right? Jesus is getting ready to go in, and James and John are talking to Jesus. And they go up to Jesus and they say, hey, Jesus, we want you to do what we're about to ask you to do, right? They don't go into him, nicely and say, hey, we're going to ask you something. I want to see what you think. They go up and they say, hey, Jesus, this is what we want. Can you give it to us? Right? And so if you can guess based off of what I just asked y'all, they basically ask Jesus, they say, hey, we want you to remember us. That way one of us can sit on your right hand and one of us sit on your left hand. Right? We want to be looked at and looked up to like you. Right? And Jesus basically tells them, it's not mine to give, right? I can't let you sit on my right hand or left hand because it's not mine to give. But then we go on to Mark chapter 11, and it doesn't tell us this for sure, but right before Jesus goes in, he sends two of his disciples. Does anybody know what he sends his two disciples to go do? To get the donkey that he's going to ride in on, right? And me personally, knowing Jesus and seeing some of the ways he acted and talked, I have a strong feeling that this was James and John. They wanted to be looked up to, and they wanted to be seen as important. So what does Jesus do? He says, sure, I'll let you go first. I'll let you go in, but all you're going to do is going to get a donkey and you're going to bring it back to me. And I'm sure that they're probably thinking, that's all you've got for me? We just asked you to be important. And all you're doing is making us go get a donkey and bringing it back to you. But what they don't realize is how important that donkey actually was. Right? Because that donkey is what led Jesus to his calling. Because if they didn't do that, Jesus can't fulfill his calling. And what was Jesus' calling? To die on the cross for our sins, all of ours, so that we could have a way to heaven. And no matter how little we think that calling is, it plays a big part in the eyes of God. If we are serving him, no matter what it is, it plays a big role and it is looked at as very important to God. Right? Whether it's something simple, right? Not all of us are called to be a preacher. I'm not called to be a preacher. Right? Well, we're all called to be preachers in our own sense, but I'm not called to be a pastor. Right? I love working with the kids, and I feel like that's my calling because I can relate to them better. Right? I'm not called to be a Sunday school teacher with the little ones. Right? I can't change a diaper. Right? I can't do it, won't do it, is probably a better way of saying it rather than can't, but that's not my calling. And we are blessed in our church with a lot of ladies that are called to do that are great at working with children, right? It is something that, like I said, I can't do, and I'm thankful that we have people that can, right? I can help John Bailey mow the grass, but I think he's so good at that calling that I don't need to help him, right? That his calling is amazing, and he does a great job at it. But no matter what that calling is, I want you to think about the boy who Jesus used his lunch to feed the 5,000. Do you think his lunch he really thought was going to be that big of a deal? There's no way he thought this was going to feed 5,000 people. But what I can give to God, God can use for greater things. God can do so much more than what we realize we can do. You might feel insignificant or not enough, but in the eyes of God, you are more than enough. You were set apart by God, you were chosen by God, and you're called by God to be His child. He loves us so much that He was willing to send His Son to die for us. Right? So what we have to realize is for us to find our calling, we have to find out who we are in the eyes of God. And if you're sitting here today and you aren't a child of God, that's your first step. You can't say, hey, God, what do you want me to do, if you don't know Him on that personal level. He can't show it to you because you don't know Him, right? It starts with, first thing is living a faithful life. When you put Him first, when you put yourself less, to be a good husband, I've got to put myself last. Hannah comes first, right? I've got to die to my own desires, my own needs, and put Hannah's first. And if I do that, that's what it means to be a good husband. I could work and do all of these things and make the most amount of money, buy Hannah the nicest things, but if I don't do what makes her feel loved, it does me no good, right? We can do all of these things for God and give Him all our money and serve Him and go on mission trips and do all of these things. Like the four of y'all that just went to Indonesia, if you went there for your own glory to come back and say, hey, look what we just did, right? We just built this house, or helped fix this house for Matthew, right? If that was your purpose, was just to get glory back here, you're not going to get any glory in heaven for it. So that trip becomes pointless now because you did it for yourself. And the goal is to do everything for God. Everything we do. Am I going to glorify God doing this? Am I going to serve Him, put myself down, and lift Him up? If I'm going to do that, you won't have to find your calling if you're putting God first. Because your calling is going to find you. Right? For me, I wasn't looking to be a youth pastor. I can promise you. I was not going into my life thinking I'm going to be a youth pastor. I wasn't going into it saying I want to work with kids, but giving God part of my life and serving Him by going to City Reach and being a sponsor, I realized this is what I think I'm called to do. By serving Him, I figured out my calling. I don't look for my calling to serve Him. I just serve Him anyways. And then my calling finds me because it overtakes your life. Serving God becomes really, really infectious. When you're around people that are serving God, talking about God, I don't know about y'all, but me personally, I want to do it more. Right? I love going to lunch with Jonathan because it doesn't matter where it is. If he's already given them $1 million bill or whatever, he's still going to hand one out. Right? And it's great to see that interaction, and it motivates me to want to do that, right? And that's what we should all be doing, especially as adults here. You know, we're talking about graduates, but this time is just important for y'all and us as a church to be there for them as well. Like we talked about, there's a lot of an unknown coming for them. And that doesn't mean we get to say, you know what, you're not in the youth, so let's just, it's time to figure it out. This is when they need us more than when they were in the youth, because they have so much more at their fingertips, right? There's so many more things that they can do but it's also great for us because now's the time for us to disciple them more. Now's the time for us to disciple, to become the next generation of our church. And that's my goal. My goal isn't just to lead them through the youth, get them through high school, and then say, see you later, right? My goal is to hopefully that one of them wants to do what I'm doing and replace me to help the next generation. Same thing for Jonathan as our pastor. He should be discipling and mentoring us because Jonathan's not going to be here forever. We have to have somebody and other people that are willing to preach and to do what he's called to do now. So first, you have to figure out where your heart is. You have to figure out where your heart lies in God's eyes. Once you figure out that, that's when you just start serving God fully, right? And especially you graduates that are here, now's the time to really give Him everything, because it's going to be really easy to put Him on the back burner because you've got so much other things to do. You know, I can attest going to college and being away from my parents, it was really easy to be like, you know, and I don't need to go to church this Sunday. It's okay. I know it's there. I know what they're going to teach me. I know I'm saved. I don't have to worry about it. Right? It's really easy. But like I said, thankfully, we weren't married, but we were there in college together. That Hannah kept me motivated, but there were still times where I didn't go. Right? It's not on Hannah to make me go to church every Sunday, is it? Right? And in fact, it's really my job to motivate Hannah to go to church. As a man and a husband, it's my job to lead us. But it's also all of our jobs to help these graduates stay motivated. You know, it's easy when they're in church, in the youth group, to keep them on track, to keep them knowing what they're supposed to be doing. And as I kind of move to a close, I want y'all, everyone in here, not just the graduates, not the adults, to think about, what is your calling? Right? We've talked about who you are is your calling. Your calling is who you are in the eyes of God. And so are you using your talents to benefit God? This is a question for all of y'all. Are you using your talents to glorify God? Are you using them for yourself? Or are you not using them at all, just because you don't know what to do? But I can promise you that there is something for you to do. We can find something for you to do. Like I said, Jonathan was talking about how Miss Jill does a lot as the pastor's wife around our church. I can guarantee you she would give you something that she has on her list. I know she won't keep it all to herself. Right? It's the same thing. I know that the ladies who cook meals for us on Wednesday nights, I know that they would be willing to let you help them, and they wouldn't want to do it by themselves. And I know the ladies that are in the nursery or teaching in Sunday school, I know that they would let you help them, right? And so I want you to think, are you using your talents to glorify God? Are you using your talents to help figure out what your calling is? And your calling can be wherever you are too. Because like we said at the beginning, we're called to love other people wherever we are. At your job, right now, at school, at the gym, wherever you are, you're called to be God's child, but you're also called to share the gospel and love other people, right? So I want to go back to Ephesians chapter 4. And I didn't mention this at the beginning because I want you to think about it is, you know, Paul is writing this, right? And it tells us here, Paul is in prison. So he's not in a great situation. He's not, in the best of situations in his life. In fact, he's probably in the exact opposite. But what is he doing here? Who's he writing to? Does anybody know? The church of Ephesus, right? And it's amazing to me. This is one of my favorite things to think about is he's in prison, and what is he doing? He's motivating his church to further their walk, to keep going, to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, and to use that to further God's kingdom, to further their church. So it says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherever ye are called. And you notice how he didn't say some of you that are called, right? It's everybody is called. And so the ones graduating, this is our call to you. We're here to motivate you to find your calling. But make sure that calling starts with your faith, starts with your heart. Figure out who you are, not what you want to do. Figure out what you want people to see you as. Do you want them to see you as a follower of Christ, a son of God, or daughter of God, a child of God, or as whatever your career is, or whatever you're good at, right? It should be first comes God. If they can see that, then they know what's really important to you. And so, as I close, Matthew and Drew, y'all can go ahead and start coming up. I just want y'all to really think about that. And y'all can go ahead and stand as well. It's the best part of this, of all of it, is it's not too late. It's never too late. Right? There was, if I'm breathing, I've still got a chance to serve God. That's the way you can think about it. As long as I'm still breathing, I should still be serving God. The second I stop breathing, that's when I get to stop serving God or living for God. And so it's not just for the students. It's everybody here. We've also got a chance to figure out what your calling is, right? To figure out, do you know Christ on that personal level? And don't wait, because you might not still be breathing tomorrow, right? You might not have another chance. And so I just want you to think about that as we sing our invitation of, do you know what your calling is, and do you know how to find it? And hopefully with this message, you've learned how to find your calling. So we can go ahead and sing.
Take my life, lead me, Lord. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Make my life useful to Thee. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Make my life useful to Thee.
Song was perfect for the message, wasn't it? So I don't have anything else. If the graduates and the families of the graduates, if y'all are here, if y'all want to go ahead and start heading back towards the fellowship hall, we have cake, ice cream, and snacks back there for everybody. Everybody stay. Shake the graduates' hands. Congratulate them for the big thing that they're achieving this week. And then we'll just hang out and take pictures, whatever we want to do. So graduates, if y'all want to go ahead and head that way. Jordan, if you want to be Mason's family, you can go with him too. Okay. Are there any... So this Wednesday is the last meal that they're making for the summer. The ladies are going to take a break this summer. That doesn't mean this is the last Wednesday night service, but it's the last meal we're having. So we still want y'all to come and worship with us on Wednesday. I think God really, He knew that I was going on vacation next week because He really challenged me a lot the last 3 weeks with preaching and then preaching tonight and just having a really, really busy at work. God really made sure that I was ready to go on vacation. So, but I don't have. Are there any other announcements? Anything else? No? All right. Jonathan, you want to close us in prayer?